Hey, so we gotta have a serious talk. If you're somebody who hires people, or if you're somebody that, in any capacity, is defining job roles, putting postings online, running an office, doing anything, uh, in 2023, or pretty much anything in the last 5 years, or anything from now until the end of eternity, we got to have a serious talk. And there's all sorts of stuff that have been coming up surrounding remote work. And I want to we got to have a very frank and serious conversation about this because this came up during the pandemic back in 2020 when a lot of companies were forced to adapt to to requiring remote work because the offices were shut down because of because of COVID, and so what all that did was that proved that companies can in fact provide opportunities for workers to do remote work. Are there differences in the workflows? Absolutely. Is it different you know, when you're working with large amounts of data, for example? Yeah, it takes longer to upload things, but there's ways to adapt. There's ways to get around it, right? And so, and I get it. There's certain types of work that you just can't do remotely. Like let's be honest, things like factory work, medical work. I mean, you don't want a doctor to say, "Oh yeah, we'll just fix your kidney and we'll operate on your kidney over Microsoft Teams." That isn't going to be a thing, right? But if you're hiring for a role that can absolutely be done remotely, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your workers, you owe it to the company, you owe it to the public to offer those positions fully remote. So, case in point, call center work. I can't think of a single reason for any call center that doesn't make it compatible with a remote environment. There's nothing technologically keeping that from working. Here's and that's just one example. You and any so that kind the reason why I mentioned call center work is because in that setup, you could also be doing office work. Could be a secretary answering, phone calls, things like that. And these are all things that, unless you physically face to face have to deal with the public, to deal with you know another department, even that is just a stretch. So we're going to strike that. We're just going to say, unless your job has absolutely requires face to face with the member of the general public, then there's literally no reason to require this be done in the office. And so one of the reasons why, like the core reason why anybody would require back to the office, is literally out of control. It's literally out of prejudice. It's just out of greed. It's out of nothing but negative emotions. Okay, it's not a good boss. It's not a good manager. It's somebody who feels that by not having everybody in the office, their role as manager is diminished. And if you don't know how to track and measure your employees' metrics without physically looking down their back, you are a shitty manager and you should find a new job. And that's literally how it is. That's how I feel about it. If you're setting job descriptions and you're hiring and you're saying, "Oh, this is remote," and then they go into the interview and find out, "Oh, it's hybrid, and in about 2 months everybody's going back to the office." Fuck you. Don't do that shit. Make that shit fucking remote. There's no excuse. If that job can be done remotely, then you make it that way. You keep it that way. I don't care if you spent millions of dollars on your office and it's killing you that you've got all this real estate that's not being used as much. You know what? You can section parts of your office off and lease it out to other businesses. don't make your workers miserable because you're miserable. That's what I'm saying. I was reading something, and I read sorts of stories very often. Like, this is such a regular thing. I'm at the point where I don't see the point in sharing screenshots or discussing like specific Reddit posts and Facebook posts in detail. But it's turning into a thing where either people are going or reading a post and they're saying, "Oh, it's a remote job," or it's hybrid. Don't get me wrong, hybrid isn't a bad thing. I'm not going to sit there and say that the opportunity to go into the office once in a while shouldn't be a thing if it's geographically possible. Because you know what? Sometimes it's nice, nice seeing your coworkers. It's nice just getting out of the house. Um, and I want to, add into that there's a reason why co-working spaces exist to begin with. Those are for remote workers. Those are for the self-employed. Those are for people who have an occasional need for the office or an office because you can't always work at home. I get it. You know, you don't have to explain it to me, and I shouldn't have to explain it to you either. You either know or you don't know, and I don't care. But, like, if your job can be done remotely, you should absolutely do it. Because of technologies like VPNs, Microsoft Teams, and any other sort of conferencing software, chat software, just any of that. There's so many ways. There's no excuse. Computers have gotten so cheap. I don't care. You can go to like buy refurbished Dells for like under $300 that will literally be useful for most office functions. So I can't fathom, other than piss poor qualities as a boss, as a manager, why these jobs that are set up to be fully remote, just to get people to apply, are all of a sudden being called back to the office. What Elon Musk did with Twitter, that was fucking bullshit. That was him flexing. That was him being Elon Musk. Okay, and we can sit here and make a series of videos ragging on Elon Musk. I'm not against the idea, but I'm not going to give that man my energy like that, okay? Because here's the problem, he's not the only one. He's not the only one. You can sit there and, yeah, I think he's a bit of a FUD, okay? But he's not the only one. There are so many companies out there right now that are calling people back to the office for no fucking reason at all, other than those managers. They're either looking out, they're pissed off because their job requires them to be at the office because of what they do. It's a thing. Um, and it depends on the field too. Like, this is why I'm saying, like, the kicker is if the job can be done fully remote. Um, because, like, there are certain things that can't. Like, if your job is working in a data center where you're working in physically working with the servers, for example, you can't do that from home. You can't do that in your pajamas at home while you play with your dog. You no, you physically have to go in and work and do the thing, and that's fine. So, like, IT is a really interesting uh, discussion because certain parts of the IT industry can absolutely be done fully remote. Anything like tech support, any sort of, web design, SEO, just anything that doesn't really require to work with a physical piece of machinery, that doesn't require face to face. I'm telling you right now, there's no reason in 2023 for you to, if you're a web developer or an SEO professional, there's literally no reason for you to meet with your clients face to face. You shouldn't have to do that. Don't get me wrong, if that's your choice and you like doing that, I'm not going to take that away from you. But, like, visually, you know, you can accomplish the same things through things like Zoom or Teams or, I mean, there's literally a whole list of them. I'm not even going to bother trying. I personally like to use Teams. And so, um, And the beautiful thing about Teams is you don't have to pay to use it. You should if you're a business, because you get all sorts of nice perks with Microsoft 365, but you can use Teams for free. It's built into Windows. You can use a personal uh, live account, and it works just fine. And so the beautiful thing is, like, the people that connect to it don't even have to have the software. You can give them a link and they can talk to you through your browser. Zoom does the same thing. And but yeah, so there's no reason to force things to be face to face, and that's kind of my next point. Is so there are aspects of the job that can be done remotely, and so, like, when you work in a remote position, or if you work for a company that's remote first, they definitely do things very differently. I've worked for a few companies like that, and so and here's the thing about those companies that do things fully remote. They comply with every legal requirement. They're fully functional. They do everything that any company that has employees, that has clients, that's got tax report or obligations, just whatever. They do everything they're supposed to do without an office. And maybe they do have an office. It's a thing. It's good. Maybe like you could go either way, right? And the point is, if you can do something remote, not only are you doing your workers a favor, you're doing your clients a favor. Because what if the job is like technical support, you're based in Idaho, and there's somebody who is exceptionally good at what you do, that's like the absolute best candidate, but they're planted in Massachusetts. If you offer that role as remote, you just hired the best candidate that's going to help your company and your clients succeed. And you know what? You fuck yourself out of the guy in Massachusetts by saying, "Oh well, you've got to relocate. We do all this stuff remotely, or we don't do this remotely. We do it. Everybody works in the office." What the fuck for? Seriously, you can't justify it. You cannot justify it unless part of your job literally requires face-to-face contact with vendors, with clients, and there's no possible way that those can be substituted with video conferences. Because as soon as you meet all of those qualifications, and you can still come up with a reason why the job can't be done remotely, at best, you've got a job description that functionally is at bare minimum hybrid. At bare minimum requires some travel. So you've got to think outside of the box. I don't care that when your daddy had the company, everybody was working in the office. I don't give a fuck how it's been done for decades, or however long your company's been in business. I don't care. That's not an excuse. That has never been an excuse. Oh, we've always done it this way. You know what? It's time to evolve. Those of you who don't evolve as a company are the companies that will rot. You know why Blockbuster failed? You know why Blockbuster ran out of business? They didn't adapt in time to online streaming services and everything else that evolved in the middle of the way. They were still doing their stores. They did nothing in the way of trying to offer streaming until it was too late. And so, like, because they chose to just keep doing it because they didn't see that this was a problem, even though their sales was dropping, and they were short-sighted, okay? Their vision was narrow, and so the weak will die off to make room for the strong. And that's basically what I'm talking about. It's just like Darwinism, except for business. BlackBerry, another example. They chose not to evolve to the rapidly evolving smartphone market. They were once the top of the smartphone market. You know who's sitting at the top? The top single manufacturer right now, honestly, it's Apple. Whether you want to argue with that or come at me with data, that I could care less about. The reason I say that is because if we're just going between iOS and Android, yeah, sure, Android has the majority. But as far as a single monolithic manufacturer that has the largest market share for smartphones, that's going to be Apple. Everybody else has to pull together to go against Apple. And the reason is because not only has Apple stayed up to date with the smartphone industry, even though Samsung and Motorola have come out with features like wireless charging and other things before uh, Apple actually put these things into their phone. Um, Even though they've done that, even by intentionally being stupid like that, um, Apple continues to not only stay afloat, stay on top of things, they're setting the pace. They're setting the pace. And so, while I know that doesn't sound like it's got anything to do with whether or not you hire people and have them work remotely, it has everything to do with your attitudes about moving forward and doing things differently. Don't get me wrong, I like going into an office and seeing people. It's great. Um, I go to a business networking meeting every week, and I can justify and say, well, there's nothing about it that can't be done over video conferencing software, but it's nice face to face seeing these people every week. And so it's just, so like I feel the same way about uh, you know working remotely. But yeah, either way, I'm going to cut this short. That's all I really, I don't want to ramble. This is all I have to say. And see you in the comments.